Pat, you got your membership roster up, so we can get into the roll call. Well, make sure you give it. I'll give you a little time to pull that up, and with that, and I'd like to call to order the April 6th TAC meeting for TAB. And first item up is approval of the agenda. So if there's no objections, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda. Please take a look. Again, not seeing any objections. The agenda is approved. Moving forward to approval of the February 2nd, 2022 minutes. As you recall, we did not have a March meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the February 2nd TAC meeting minutes.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Brian. Is there a second to approve the February 2nd, 2022?
Second.
All right, and a second by Lisa. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson.
Aye.
Objent. Robgent or anybody, Carver? Okay, Labrie.
Aye.
Close.
Aye.
Isaacson.
Aye.
Breeze.
Aye.
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Witter.
Aye.
Potsukos.
Aye.
Steve Peterson. He is going to be here. I think he's dropping kids off at this point. Larson.
Aye.
Harrington. Or Metro Transit. Okay. Solberg.
Aye.
AO.
Aye.
Reef.
Aye.
Manueli just sent me an email. He's a voter anyway. Fightin.
Aye.
Pittaparthy. See you on here, goodbye. McCullough.
Aye.
Eel.
Aye.
Ashfeld.
Aye.
Howley.
Aye.
Thought I saw you, Charlie.
Aye.
Okay. Omi.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Culver. Ellis. Kozlucher.
Aye.
Hager.
Aye.
Vol.
Aye.
Dermody.
Aye.
And Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Minutes are now approved. Moving on to our next item, which you may all recall from our TAC changes to our governing document. So we have now a public comment period. And Joe, I'm going to ask you, did we have anybody that registered for public comment for the committee, any committee business?
We did not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. So then we'll move forward to the TAB report. Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. TAB met on March 16th. At the meeting, First Vice Chair Debbie Cattell chaired the meeting in Hovland's absence. There was no chair's report. For the MnDOT report, Michael Barnes reported that the President signed the federal infrastructure funding bill, which was covered as an information item at TAB also. Construction kickoff would start in a few weeks. Bids on larger projects are coming in pretty good and about 10% higher for the small projects. At that point in the meeting, traffic fatalities were at 54. compared to 60 at the same time in 2021, and numbers are still higher than prior years. For the MAC report, Carl Crimmins reported that COVID testing is still being done at the airport by appointment. Passenger levels are at 110% over 2020, and job fairs are ongoing for all the concession airs at the airport. For the Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barber reported that council meetings will be going back in-person meetings at the end of April. May will likely be an in-person meeting for TAB. The TPP amendment that revised the bus arterial network and added 6 freight corridors has moved through the Transportation Committee and the full council. These came through the committees and TAB. Work on the regional development guide has begun. Several TAB members participated in scenario planning workshops for the development guide coming up. The work is currently in the vision and values stage. There will be additional opportunities for TAB members to be involved going forward, going into the goals and outcomes and then policies. There was a report by the Suburban Transit Association, Representative Dan Keeley. He provided an update on the work of the transit providers in the Suburban Transit Association. Post-pandemic ridership is growing. Microtransit and click-to-ride services are growing with month-over-month ridership records. Southwest Transit has completed its agency sustainability action plan, providing a roadmap that will make Southwest Transit a net zero energy operation by 2050. MBTA will begin the development of a sustainability plan and zero emission bus plan in 2022. Plymouth Metrolink is in the process of developing a former strip mall into a transit-oriented development with new transit facility. And then there were 2 information items. A mobility hub planning guide was presented by Meredith Klakatka of Metro Transit. And the guide is a toolkit for transit systems and communities for locating and designing mobility hubs. And the guide will be uploaded to their webpage. The Iija funding scenario, we had an item presented by Joshua Knetterud Hubring and Brian Gage at MnDOT. This provides 5 years of apportionment for federal fiscal years 2022 to federal fiscal year 2026. Current continuing resolution provided appropriations through March 2022. State legislative action is still required for MnDOT to use the additional funds. Over 5 years, there will be $630 million additional for existing programs and $570 million for new programs. And that was all for TAB.
All right, thank you, Elaine. Appreciate that. Any questions for Elaine on the TAB report? Not seeing any. We'll move on to next committee reports, Executive Committee. So this morning, the Executive Committee did meet. We had several topics in front of us for everybody to be aware of. Number one, the TAC exec did recommend appointment of Scott Merrick as vice chair for the planning committee, and Paul Lomi is the vice chair for funding and programming. So those are effective now. Moving forward, we also voted to and approved the establishment of official establishment of the bike, ped, and transit working groups that were established as part of our bylaw changes. And then moving forward, we did have a discussion about the 2050 TPP working groups and a couple items of note there. So this TPP working group will be kicking off here probably in mid-May. It'll take approximately 2 years as the development of the TPP moves forward. That working group will work as really a supplement to TAC planning. i.e. TAC planning will meet just really to discuss those items, working items that they need to approve. And the working group will take that time frame to work on the TPP. A couple things to be aware of for TAC members, of course, here. As the request for membership in that committee will be more than just TAC planning. But if you're TAC planning members, for TAC members, you'd like to have someone else appointed to that group, or think about who you want to represent your agency on the TPP working group. Make sure that you're thoughtful about that process, because we do want to make sure, as that is really a planning agency, a planning focus, that when it comes to TAC, that you guys aren't caught unaware or have disagreement. We want to make sure that that process is thorough and consistent throughout the regional process. In addition to that, we did talk about our meeting process, folks, for the foreseeable future. So at this point, TAC exec did recommend, even though TAB is going to be in person starting in May, the TAC planning and funding and programming remain in a remote status through August. And during that time frame, we will evaluate what that process is. So September would then we would look to either stay the course with remote meetings or possibly change to hybrid or in person, but that will not take place before September of this fall. Additional items we talked about were future meeting agendas. Want to make sure everybody's aware that standard work items coming up for TAC in the upcoming months, but there was a comment to bring forward the fact that Mark Doctor from FHWA will be presenting at the April 20th TAB meeting. He is a national leader in the safe systems approach, so folks may want to tune into that TAB meeting if you don't otherwise normally. And again, that's for TAB at the April meeting, which is virtual. We won't get a chance to have Mark Doctor here in person, so that's really our only opportunity. And with that, I will stand for any questions. Not seeing anything. We'll move forward to our next item, which is item number 2022-14, a streamlined tip amendment. Joe, you want to give us an overview?
Will do, Mr. Chair. My friends at your agency kept me quite busy going into these last couple meetings. So we have a number of tip amendments. Most of them are pretty routine. So 2022-14 is a streamlined tip amendment for 3 HSIP cost increases for the city of Minneapolis, and the amendment is to request an increase of the total cost of these 3 projects. The projects are the result of steel, concrete, and signal cost increases that exceeded the city's expectations at the time of application. There's no change to any of these projects proposed, and all this would be local funding, not federal HSIP funding.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe on this particular item? Not seeing any. I would entertain any other discussion or a motion to recommend adoption of the amendment.
Mr. Chair, this is Carl Keel. I move.
Go ahead, Carl. All right. Committee members, we have a recommendation to adopt the amendment by Carl Keel. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
What was that?
A second by Jenny. All right, committee members, we have a motion to recommend that the Transportation Advisory Board recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 TIP to increase the total cost of 3 City of Minneapolis Highway Safety Improvement Program projects, otherwise known as SP 141-020-123, 141-030-052, and 141-430-010. Any further discussion on that item? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson?
Aye.
Rob Gent, are you here? Okay. Labrie?
Yeah, I'm here. Aye. Sorry, Lyndon.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Ellos?
Aye.
Isaacson?
I saw his mouth move.
Good enough for me. Freeze? Jorgensen?
Aye.
Jorgensen?
Aye.
She was
Winner?
Aye.
Otsukos?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Harrington, are you here yet? Solberg?
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Reef,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
McCarthy, are you here yet? Okay, McCullough,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Ashfeld,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Vol,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
and Kurtz.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 22-16. Joe, can you give the staff report, please?
Yep. So this is another cost increase project. This is a MnDOT is requesting an increase to the cable median barrier project on US 169. This amendment would increase the total cost of the median barrier project between Brooklyn Park and Champlin. The request includes also a minor correction to the mileage from 5.55 to 5.4. That's actually something that would not necessitate a tip amendment if this was the only issue. And there's no change to the scope proposed. You will see a change to the FHWA cost. That is a MnDOT. That is coming from the MnDOT pot of HSIP as opposed to the HSIP that comes through the solicitation that you see. And I can explain more on that if you'd like. But basically, MnDOT has HSIP that they distribute that doesn't go through the solicitation. That's also true of STP funds and funds like that. So this is not extra solicitation funding going into that FHWA piece. And with that, it's time for questions.
All right. Any questions for Joe on this particular item? Not seeing any. At this point, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Brian to recommend approval. Is there a second?
Freeze, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second by Lisa Freeze to recommend the Transportation Advisory Board recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 tip to increase the total and federal cost and correct the length of MnDOT US 169 cable medium barrier installation project, otherwise known as SP 2750-97. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson.
Aye.
Rob Gent. Rob Gent. Labrie.
Aye.
Ellos.
Aye.
Isaacson.
Aye.
Breeze.
Aye.
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Witter.
Aye.
Coach Sukos.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Solberg.
Aye.
AO.
Aye.
Reef.
Aye.
Fighton.
Aye.
McCullough.
Aye.
Keel.
Aye.
Ashfeld.
Aye.
Howley.
Aye.
Omi.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Lucher.
Aye.
Hager.
Aye.
Vol. Dermody.
Aye.
And Kurtz.
Aye.
And if I missed anybody, because I'm not reading the names that haven't responded yet.
Linden's and I. Thanks, Joe.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to our next item, 22-17. Joe, you want to give the staff report on that?
I will. So this is a tip amendment request from Carver County, and the request is to insert a project for Minnesota Highway 5 preliminary engineering. This is to add a project including federally funded preliminary engineering along Minnesota 5 and Carver County. This project was recently funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act as part of congressional districted spending. So it is a little bit unusual for preliminary engineering to be in the tip, but it's not wrong or anything like that. It's just that it's usually not federally funded, but this was a direct federal award. So Carver County, I would assume, is happy to accept it. With that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe on this item? Not seeing any, I would entertain a motion to recommend adoption.
So move, Innocent.
All right, I have a motion by Innocent to recommend adoption. Is there a second?
I'll second. Omi.
Omi, all right, thank you. We have a second by Omi. All right, committee members, with that, we have a motion and a second in front of us to recommend that the Transportation Advisory Board recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 TIP to add a 2022 project allocating recently awarded federal funding to the Trunk Highway 5 Arboretum Boulevard corridor in Carver County, otherwise known as SP 010-596-015. Any further discussion on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson,
Aye.
Robgent,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Rees, Jorgensen,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Kotsukos,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Solberg,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Reef,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
McCullough,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Ashfeld,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Howley,
He said aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Kozlucher,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Vole,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
and Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to our final tip, or our next tip amendment, project number 22-18. Joe, can you give us staff report? Oh, we already do that one?
Nope, 18's up.
Okay, I had it up on my screen, so it confused me.
Well, there's a lot of tip amendments. So this is the Kellogg Bridge. We do have two Kellogg bridges that we sometimes talk about. This is the one by the Excel Center. So this amendment is request the local funding increase of the Kellogg Bridge Reconstruction project for a total cost increase from about 28.5 million to about 36.2 million. Project was funded through the regional solicitation, but they're not requesting any federal cost increase. This would all be the city coming up with the match, and there's no scope change proposed in this piece. So the project was originally programmed for 2021 and was given an extension to 2022 with federal payback in 2023, but that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about a simple cost, or a large, but we're talking about a cost increase not to be federal. With that, I would stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe on this item? Not seeing or hearing any. I would entertain a motion to recommend adoption of the amendment.
Move, Dermody.
All right, I have a motion to approve by Dermody. Is there a second?
Second.
And Hager.
Second by Isaacson. All right, committee members, we have a motion and a second in front of us to recommend that the Transportation Advisory Board recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 TIP to increase the cost of the City of St. Paul's Kellogg Bridge replacement, otherwise known as SP 164-158-025. Any further discussion on that item? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson,
Aye.
Robgent,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Rees,
Aye.
Jorgensen,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Kotsukos,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Solberg,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Reef,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
McCullough,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Ashfeld,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Kozlucher,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Bull,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
and Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, thank you all. Motion passes. Moving on to our next item, we have Planning Committee. Emily, would you like to introduce our next item, 22-12?
Sure thing. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I usually like to go camera on for these things, but my computer really hates WebEx today. So allow me to give an anonymous intro to Sarah Maskey from the council. She's here to talk to us today about the transportation addendum to the Met Council Public Engagement Plan. And so this is the Transportation Public Participation Plan, or as everyone knows, the PPP. And so this is federally required for every MPO. And just Sarah's going to walk us through a few changes that were recommended by FHWA and FTA. Mostly those changes are surrounding kind of the inclusion of some tribal governments and then how we're evaluating the effectiveness of our outreach efforts. I will share that tech planning, while they had a few comments kind of about how tribal governments have already shared how they like to be included through some of these transportation processes. This was passed unanimously at tech planning. And I'll let Sarah take it away.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'm Sarah Maskey. I am a senior communications consultant in the communications department at the Met Council. And I am here to talk to you about the transportation addendum to the Metropolitan Council Public Engagement Plan, which is a mouthful, I understand. Next slide, please. Last year, last March, the Transportation Management Area Planning Certification Review was released, and the FHWA and FTA identified 3 prime recommendations to update the Transportation Public Participation Plan to include tribal governments and tribal consultation strategies, identify an update cycle. Ideally, this would occur the year before each transportation policy plan update, and evaluate the council's transportation public participation efforts. Next slide, please. At the time that we started reviewing the public participation plan, we wanted to really kind of ground us in the council's role in public engagement. And so we went back to the Thrive MSP 2040 public engagement principles. And those include defines consistent expectations for how the council will engage the region's residents and constituencies, evaluates how engagement will support policy planning and operational decisions, collaborates and consults with members of the community, especially historically underrepresented populations, focuses on developing lasting relationships with the region's residents and constituencies, highlights best practices for engagement in the region, and works towards making decisions with people and not for people. Next slide, please. And out of Thrive 2040 comes the public engagement plan for the council as a whole. And to give you just a little bit of background on the public engagement plan, it was created collaboratively with members of the Community Engagement Steering Committee. And this is what we call co-creation. And because of that, we felt very strongly that this was a good basis for moving forward with the public participation plan. So the engagement principles outlined in the public engagement plan include equity, respect, transparency, relevance, accountability, collaboration, inclusion, and cultural competence. Next slide, please. And of course, we are meeting the federal regulation, and I will not read that out loud, but this is federally required for us to have a public participation plan. And as we were going through this process, we ended up deciding that rather than having a standalone public participation plan for transportation, it made more sense for us to have it be a part of the public engagement plan for the council. And that meets both the federal regulation and also holds true to the basis of the public engagement council has set forward. So next slide, please. So I want to give some kudos here to our former intern, Grant Brockle, who did a peer review for us to look at 6 metropolitan planning organizations that were similar in size and scope to identify potential areas where we might have gaps and things that we could potentially add to our public participation plan. So next slide, please. So first of all, I'm going to go through some of the areas where we added content into the addendum to the the public engagement plan. So diversity and inclusion was a key focus area. We expanded and clarified the definition of historically underrepresented people. And then we also include the governor's tribal relations executive order. And that executive order was actually ratified into law. Sorry, did not include that into this slide in the 2021 legislative cycle. So this law includes the Met Council and tribal state relations. The Met Council adopted a government-to-government tribal relations policy as a result of this that outlined our role with tribal nations that included consultation, which is the formal process of government-to-government relations, collaboration, which is the staff-to-staff relationship that we have with tribal nations, which is a less formal step, and coordination, which means that we're working with residents in the region who belong to a tribal community, but perhaps do not necessarily belong to one of the federally recognized tribes. Next slide, please. The second part that we updated was to update and categorize our engagement methods. And we did this in a way so that it was consistent across all of the work that we do. And we wanted to align it with the IAP2 spectrum of public participation, which I am sure all of you are familiar with. We did make a slight tweak to the categories of inform, consult, involve, collaborate. And the IAP2 says empower, but that implies that we have power over other organizations and other people who make decisions for themselves. So we changed that to co-create. Next slide, please. And evaluation. We really wanted to, again, build on the measures of success in the public engagement plan, which include that they're consistent with overall vision, outcomes, and goals. Used practices and principles that are collaborative in nature and includes many perspectives of the region. Stakeholders are integrated with deliberation and engagement, and that there are quantitative and qualitative assessments of engagement. And of course, we do this with every time we're going out to the public, we are evaluating how we are doing as far as reach, as far as comments that are received, and as far as how we respond. So those all kind of boil up into the evaluation for the engagement plan. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline. We are currently on step 2 with TAC to review and recommend the draft for public comment, and we'll go to tab next. And next slide. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate the overview of the agenda item in front of us. Are there any questions for Sarah on this? Not seeing any. I would entertain a motion to recommend to TAB to release the, I guess, public engagement plan for public release for public comment.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Brian. Is there a second?
Second, Jorgensen.
All right. Members, we have a motion and a second in front of us to recommend to TAB that the draft transportation addendum to the Metropolitan Council Public Engagement Plan be released for public comment. Is there any further discussion on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson.
Aye.
Rupkin.
Aye.
Labrie.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Isaacson.
Aye.
Breeze.
Aye.
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Witter. Witter. I see muted. Maybe he stepped away. Kotsukos.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Solberg.
Aye.
Ao.
Aye.
Reef.
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
McCullough,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Ashfeld,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Cole,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
and Kurtz.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to our next item, Funding and Programming Committee items. And I understand Paul Omi was the acting chair for the last meeting, so I'll turn it over to Paul.
All right, thanks, Chair. I'll do a brief introduction of this item and then turn it back to Joe. There's been a couple moving parts on this item since the Funding and Programming Committee. And I believe somebody from Metro Transit's here too, if any of the committee wants any more specifics about the amendment that's being requested. But Metro Transit is requesting an amendment to the 2022 to 2025 TIP to increase the 2022 cost for the Southwest Light Rail Transit project, the Green Line project, by $6.25 million. 50 million of that is from federal dollars and 12.5 is from a local match, basically a 20% match. So Metro Transit is planning to fund this project several ways. There's $28.6 million of Section 530507 funds that will be removed from the planned projects for 2022 and reallocated to the Green Line extension project this year. Those projects will still be funded, is my understanding. In addition, there's $21.3 million of Section 5307 funds that is going to be that is being provided for the project from unspent funds in 2020 and 2022 projects. So at the March 17th Funding Programming Committee, the TAC Funding and Programming Committee voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the amendment. But with that, there's been a couple updates for this amendment that maybe Joe can just go over. So with that, Joe, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as Chair Omi said, this is $50 million in federal Section 5307 funds being added to the project for the fiscal year 22 piece of the project for the Southwest LRT Green Line extension. And I think it's important to note, because there has been some question that on the second page of the attachment, you'll see some places where some of that funding, the $28.7 million of federal funds, comes from, including 4 projects being eliminated from the TIP. And it's important to note that those projects are still going to be completed. Transit projects in this region just don't end up in the TIP when there's no federal funding. So that's going to be funded primarily through MVEST and some closed debt service. And we do have Metro Transit representatives on hand if there's more specificity needed on that. And so as Paul mentioned, some of the money comes from unspent fiscal year 2020 and 2021 Section 5307 funds. And I know in the FHWA world that might seem a little bit strange, but in the FTA world, that is common for funds to have a little more flexibility year to year to be spent. So this is not a really atypical action occurring right now. So I also want to point out that at the Funding and Programming Committee, we had the Lake Street and Marshall Avenue BRT project, the B line, shown as being removed from the TIP, and that we have changed that. That has been rectified since then, because that is a regionally significant project and as such has to be in the TIP. So we worked with Metro Transit to make sure that it's going to be in the TIP and to make sure that all the other pieces of this TIP amendment still work, and they do. So, and then I also want to add one more thing, that when the Funding and Programming Committee made a motion last month, it was to add $50 million to the Southwest LRT project. That really should have been $50 million federal. So there is a suggested motion in there, and Mr. Chair Solberg said that he would read that, but it really would specify that it's 62.5 million with 50 million of that being federal. With that, I would stand for questions, and we do have, I don't know if anybody from Metro Transit wants to fill in first before there's questions, but I believe Joan Hollick is here along with a few others. Yeah, and Joan, let us know if you want to fill in. Otherwise, you can be on hand for questions as well.
Joan?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Joe and committee members. My name is Joan Hollick. I'm the Deputy Project Director for the Green Line Extension Project. I would defer any specific questions on the mix of funds to Ed Petrie, the Director of Finance for Metro Transit. But maybe I can take a step back and give the committee some context for this action as it relates to the overall project. In late January, the Met Council authorized staff to proceed with a settlement agreement for the project's civil construction contractor. And this settlement agreement established completion dates to civil construction, which added an additional 34 months to civil construction. That additional 34 months to civil construction will delay the follow-on systems contractor and the opening date for the line. At this time, we estimate that the project will be in revenue service in 2027. This significant delay will result in additional costs to the project. And at this time, we estimate those costs to range from approximately $450 to $550 million. Today's action before you would be a first step in addressing funding for those additional costs. And I'm happy to stand for any specific questions the committee has.
All right, thank you, Joan. Any questions for Joan on what we've heard so far? Go ahead, Brian.
Joan, thanks for coming this morning. I guess my question would be the 450 to 550 million. This TIP amendment is part of paying for that, or is that above and beyond?
This amendment would be part of that total amount, correct?
Thank you.
Okay. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Joan. This being the first step towards those other cost increases, I guess this is really a question for staff. Do we have to take any of those other actions into account in evaluating the fiscal constraint test on this? Or are they truly like separate actions and we can evaluate those other actions when they come forward?
Is that a question about the other projects that were funded with the federal funds?
Well, you mentioned that this is the first step and we're expecting
yes.
others to come. And so I just want to make sure that we're not, this step isn't forcing us to vote a certain way on the next ones that come forward without having evaluated them first. I don't want to get us into any trouble with the fiscal constraint test if we really need to be evaluating more than what we're seeing here today.
Sure, understood, and thank you for that clarification. I would say that this action is very specific to the 5307 funding. This does not, I think, force the committee or any other body to commit funds downstream.
Okay, thank you for that, Joan. Charlie, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 2 of the report, it lists those projects. Just curious, project 5, preventative maintenance of what? What PM is being taken away as part of this?
Is that for you, Joan, or is that for you?
I defer to Ed.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm Ed Petrie. I'm Director of Finance with Metro Transit. The project you're referring to is called preventative maintenance. This is where we have the ability through 5307 dollars to bring that into our bus operations to pay for preventive maintenance activities for bus, like doing oil changes, tire rotations, brakes, those types of items. We are now going to fund those funds or those dollars with either additional motor vehicle sales tax or some federal dollars. So the preventive maintenance activities, or the federal relief funds. So those preventive maintenance activities will still happen in the bus operations, just with a different color money.
Charlie, do you have more?
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Anybody else with questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Lyndon, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair.
Lyndon.
I guess my overall question is based on what we just said about local or federal. So if you're backfilling those projects with other budget money, why didn't you just use that money to pay for this rather than doing this federal fund swap thing?
Ed?
Okay, Chair Committee members, once again, Ed Petrie, I'll address that question. First of all, I'll go start at the end, then go back to the beginning. There is the prohibition that we cannot bring in, for example, state type funds into the Southwest project, which is why we are bringing in federal dollars, $5307 into the Southwest project. So backing up here, with this amendment, I think Joe had mentioned earlier, there's basically two types of local money that we're bringing into our base capital program. The first one is $10 million worth of transit debt service. Debt service dollars comes from transit bond issuance that have matured. When the council issues debt, they issue it at 105% of the anticipated debt service to pay out. Any dollars that are left after the maturity of the debt can then be used for future debt retirements, arbitrage, or transfer to the capital debt program or to cancel transit capital program. So there's over $10 million in that fund. It's eligible to transfer, so we're transferring it to the Metro Transit base capital program. The other piece that's coming in is motor vehicle sales tax. We received forecasts from the state of Minnesota in both November and February of each year. Motor vehicle sales tax has been very positive, very strong forecasts, and receipts have been in excess of budget. So we're bringing then the motor vehicle sales tax then down into the capital program. Both are eligible uses in our capital program. One of the things that we wanted to make sure was, with this adjustment, we wanted to make sure that our base bus and light rail capital program remained intact. With this adjustment, they remain intact, so any bus purchases, shelter builds, technology programs like fare collection equipment, they're all intact. They just won't be used with federal dollars. They'll now be 100% local. As a result of bringing that $50 million of local funds into the base capital program, we're able then to release 5307 funds, which we can then transfer over to the Southwest line.
Okay. Brian.
Morning, Ed.
Good morning, Brian.
Nice to see you. I think my friend from St. Paul raised a pertinent question that we should consider in framing this for TAB. I think that, to Joan's point, everyone is aware that there are many more costs that are coming. And the way that this TIP amendment is framed, I think will be confusing to them to say that it meets the fiscal constraint test when we know that there are many more costs coming. And if memory serves, transit projects are a little bit different in terms of how they're viewed for fiscal constraint, and so you have more flexibility in doing it in pieces rather than needing to demonstrate the entire fiscal constraint for known costs. And so I think we need to be thoughtful about how we frame this for TAB, because it is, I don't know what the right term is. It's a little bit arcane and unique to transit projects. And this is such a charged project that we're going to need to be very sharp and crisp in terms of how we portray it.
Okay. Brian, anything else? All right.
Mr. Chair, this is Joe with Anoka. Say a quick question here. As seen as this is a spotlighted project right now, Joan, do you have some insight as we start to talk to our reps that are on TAB? Because there'll be a lot of questions related to this project. Do you have some insight into what the next steps might be? Where is that funding gap going to come from? I'm sure that question may come up from several members. Do you have some insight on what you're thinking right now?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members. I can say that the Met Council Chair Zelli is working very closely with our funding partners, both federal and local, to identify any and every funding opportunity that may be available to address the additional costs of the project.
And for anything set in motion right now, or is it still open right now?
My understanding is the discussions are still ongoing.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Maybe Joan or Ed, what is, just thinking of along those lines, what, this one is certainly moving forward. It's 22 funds. We have some flexibility in that, but what does it look like for, from your process to continue to achieve the rest of those funds? Is there a timeline that has to be achieved from your perspective?
Mr. Chair, members, I can maybe provide a overall kind of picture of the project as we're moving forward. As I mentioned, we've established these completion dates to civil construction, which has resulted in downstream delay and additional costs. So at this time, the project office staff were initiating a similar negotiation with our follow-on systems contractor, where we will then begin to identify completion dates for their work and additional costs associated with that delay. After that work is complete, we'll be looking at the total project cost and the revenue service date. All that to say, Mr. Chair, we anticipate that the costs will be known later this year as to total project costs and opening date. That's our estimate at this time.
I think all that, to Brian's point, this is a little more confusing and will be for TAB, especially not being in the details of many of these things. So trying to be as clear about how this proceeds forward for them and what this particular amendment means will be, I think, critical in moving through TAB. So. All right.
Just a follow-up, Mr. Chair, Lyndon.
Go ahead, Lyndon.
My question. So is it safe to say that the remaining overruns can only be funded with federal and county money?
Mr. Chair, members, I would say that the way that our funding mechanism is set up here regionally at this time, those are the funding streams that are available. But I do want to stress that Chair Zelli is talking with all funding partners about any options that may be available, including maybe some new options potentially.
All right. Any other questions for Ed or Joan? Anything folks would think needs to be clarified for TAB? Now is our opportunity. As I've said to TAB many times, the TAC is to provide you with professional and technical recommendations so that you can make your decisions. So anything we need, we can get on the record here. Go ahead, Brian.
Just to add to my comment earlier, I think it might be worth building into your presentation or at least at your discussion, some points on process and why transit projects are different from a fiscal constraint standpoint.
That would be helpful.
And you all know those process steps. I think we just need to be really crisp about what the process is here and why it's different from how folks on TAB have normally entertained discussions about fiscal constraint for highway projects.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Carl.
This is Carl. So my understanding is that the 4 projects that are being removed from the TIP are intended to be delivered. Is there a commitment to that, or how does that get memorialized?
Joan, I think that one. Oh, Ed.
Yeah, Chair, committee member, this is Ed again. What we will, So what we will do is with our budget amendment, then we will switch out. We will take a budget amendment to the council, switch out the federal dollars, bring the local dollars in.
So I guess my question is, should we have that as a condition of recommendation?
Chair, committee member, because I guess my comment is, we stated right in your business item also that we will be replacing those projects with local dollars. So, I guess basically we said our commitment there is that we will replace with local.
Maybe this is a question for Joe. I'll just, Joe, thinking about this, normally I don't think those state funded transit improvements are in the TIP. Is that a component that will be maintained then because of this amendment? Effectively changing those line items from federal FTA to other?
Mr. Chair, you're correct that these kind of projects, when they're not funded federally in transit projects, do not end up in the TIP. I think the only analogy I can think of is that most of our scope changes now, it seems like, include this is going to be done in some other project. We don't necessarily make that a condition in our motions. We've tended to trust the applicant. If somebody feels that this is different, you can certainly pursue that. That's I wouldn't be able to point to a rule because there's not a lot of precedent for what we're doing with these transit projects, but I do know that history when applicants say we're going to do this has been to be pretty trustworthy.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Michael.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for that insight, Joe. Yeah, I think typically with those types of projects, we're talking about, you know, tens of thousands of dollars or maybe $100,000, $200,000. I think this might be a different case where, you know, I certainly can trust that they'll follow through, but just to memorialize, you know, these millions of dollars and these preventative maintenance and other projects are going to be delivered. I tend to agree with Carl that that might be good direction for this approval. That's all I have.
All right, looks like Steve.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So my question for Ed, as far as the budget amendment is concerned from going to the council, what's the timing on that? I wonder if kind of a compromise would be, you know, we would follow up and bring that back to this committee when that budget amendment takes place, just as a check on our processes. Curious as to the timing there.
Chair, committee members, the assumption would be that I would assume we would take it with our second quarter budget amendment, which I believe is in the June timeline of 2022. So once this action is approved, we would then make the switch in our capital program.
So it's a near-term activity. It sounds like added that we could even as Joe or Elaine could kind of follow up with this committee here that took place. If that's a concern from folks, that would seem like an easy thing to do. But
yeah, you are totally correct. It is near term, and the plan would be we would bring it with our next budget amendment.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, and since I'm just thinking through this a little bit, so there, since this will be local dollars, not in the TIP, that makes it a little tougher for us to put kind of hooks in the motion per se, just because it's locally non projects not in the TIPs. Because that would be my probably preference would be to follow up on it and bring it back to the committee that this action that took place.
And Chair and committee members, I can definitely follow up with Joe on when we make that amendment.
And just thinking here too a little bit, maybe part of this is just the way this is shown in our staff report, Steve, Joe, right? It's taking it out completely rather than saying the total cost.
Yeah.
850,000 and FTA and then local. It could be just 850,000 and then you show that all as other or however, so that it's just so that it's clear that those projects continue and this project Southwest receives that total of 62.5. That might provide clarity then as well to TAB, but as far as the discussion that we have here going on, are others comfortable with this moving forward if we see, I guess it looks like June or July with the second quarter budget information coming back to us to show that this is moving that those projects have moved forward? It is a bit of an oddball here for us, so I think we get whatever is comfortable for this group. I think the intent is to make sure that these projects move forward.
Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable with that. This is Carl. I think I'm just saying that this is the scale of this is much larger than we typically deal with. So I think we just want to be very deliberate about it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be transparent to the public as well. Besides just this committee, to your point, Carl, and this documentation might be the only time people see some of that. So with this and future amendments, I think that will be key. And then I would also, as I said, for staff to think about how this is shown in the tab report, understanding tax comments on this. All right. Any further discussion on this item?
So, Mr. Chair, does this open the door to us talking about defederalizing other projects in the region again?
You know what? I guess with this particular project, it does bring a question. Since many of those are defederalized, but I guess part of the question would be, what are the requirements on these type with FTA funds versus what we're normally dealing with from FHWA, and maybe that's a piece staff can give us some feedback on.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a little different. The defederalization that we were talking about 3 or 4 years ago was about regional solicitation projects and how we would fund them through our process, the TAB process, I should say, and then eventually try to defederalize them. These are projects that are in a little bit more fluid of a process when it comes to Metro Transit and programming them locally. So I don't know that that's a direct analogy, although Metro Transit could probably speak to whether or not this reduces their requirements or if they're going to get to or have to do less because they're taking federal funding off of these projects, but I don't think that's the intent. But I would say that that's kind of an analogy, not necessarily a direct analogy.
Right, it's not direct, and I think that's the point. Is what does that do from an FTA perspective for Metro Transit? No longer having, again, public facility signs, lights, heat pads, real-time signs that was federally funded is now state funded. Does that mean there's less requirements for minority hiring or project solicitation? So, and I don't know that Ed, unless you have, or Joan, I think we can wait to hear back on that from the experts that watch those dollars. So with the program.
Well, the other distinction too, Mr. Chair, is that these are their federal funds.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the challenges with defederalizing within the regional solicitation is we were talking about different agencies carrying federal and others benefiting from defederalizing, and that was, I think, one of the complications. So.
Okay. All right. Any further questions on this? Maybe we can get some feedback on that and then compare apples to apples on that particular topic, Lyndon.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Again, anybody with any further comments? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to recommend the tab, recommend the adoption of the amendment.
So move. Ellis, Hennepin County.
All right, we have a motion by Ellis to recommend adoption of the amendment for the 22 to 25 tip. Is there a second? Second by Isaacson. All right, committee members, we have a motion and a second in front of us to recommend the tab, recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 tip to increase the cost of the Southwest LRT Green Line extension. 22 project, otherwise known as SP number TRF-TCMT-22AG by 62.5 million total, 50 million federal. Any further discussion on this item? Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. With the motion on the table, just from staff's perspective, I think what we would do is we would clearly lay out the Metro Transit's committing to do the other projects. And one of the things you'll notice in the tab action items that we're doing now is a quick summary right at the front end for tab members. So they don't get lost in all the technical details of 5 pages of stuff that's important to me and the rest of you, but not to them. So I think right in that upfront summary, we would reiterate that commitment, and just so it's very, very clear that there'll be some follow up here.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I think that'll be a critical piece there. All right,
Mr. Chair, this is Joe with Anoka County. I was just going to reiterate my comment earlier. I think it's important that when staff walks into the tab meeting, be prepared to answer some of those questions about upcoming funding, what you're looking at. I mean, this is, like you said, this is the first step in a long journey, but I think having some of that information ready, granted you don't have the full picture in front of you, but having something laid out in front of you is going to help, because I'm sure the comments are going to come up. I'm sure the questions are come up about what is the next step. This is 50 million out of a $500 million request. This is just a drop in the bucket. So that's just a comment from the peanut gallery here. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. All right, any further discussion? All right, with the motion in front of us, all those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson?
Aye.
Robgent?
Aye.
Labrie?
Aye.
Ellos?
Aye.
Isaacson?
Aye.
Green?
Aye.
Jorgensen?
Aye.
Witter?
Aye.
Kotsukos?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Solberg?
Aye.
AO?
Aye.
Reef?
Aye.
Fighton?
Aye.
McCullough?
Aye.
Keel?
Aye.
Ashfeld?
Aye.
Howley?
Aye.
Omi?
Aye.
Thompson?
Aye.
Kozlucher?
Aye.
Hager?
Aye.
Vol?
Aye.
Dermody?
Aye.
And Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. That will move forward. Moving on to item number 22-15. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a tip amendment. I'm sorry, Chair Omi, were you intending to speak about this? I certainly can.
It doesn't matter. You can go ahead, Joe.
Gotcha. So this is a tip amendment for the I-94 auxiliary lane project between Oakdale and Woodbury. This amendment is a request to add a new roughly 2 mile, I think it's 1.9 mile eastbound auxiliary lane to Interstate 94 from the I-94 694 94 interchange in Oakdale to Washington County Highway 19 in Woodbury, and I believe that's called Woodbury Avenue. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Woodbury Drive.
Woodbury Drive. I will change that for tab because I'm sure somebody will ask that. So this is a big part of this is a freight project that was amended into the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan on March 9th. So many of you probably remember that. So that freight component, that freight improvement component is being added along with updated guardrail and noise wall, which is going to be added to the existing maintenance project. You'll see on the page showing the projects that there are 2 projects. It really is one project separated by funding source. But that little piece is being added to the original project. And this is a regionally significant project because it's a lane add of over a mile. So what we're doing here is we're recommending release for public comment, which TAB should do later this month, and then TAB would move this on to Transportation Committee and Council in May following the public comment period. And with that, I would stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions or comments for Joe on this particular item? Go ahead, Jenny.
So question, Joe, is there a safety aspect to this lane ad?
Members and Mr. Chair, good
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead. So, Jenny, I can answer part of that. So this project does include safety enhancements as part of that lane ad. As a matter of fact, that does well, in part, reducing the weaving, diverging and merging issues that we've had at that interchange for several years, associated with the high level of freight that are in the area.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this particular project?
I can personally attest to the safety component of this project.
I'm sure you can, Lisa, from your new home. Thank you. All right, not seeing any further questions, I would entertain a motion to recommend recommend the adoption of the amendment and release for public comment.
Move approval, Linden.
All right, thank you, Lyndon. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second, Jorgensen.
All right, we have a motion on the table and a second by Jorgensen to recommend the TAB, recommend adoption of an amendment to the 22 to 25 TIP to add a project line funding a new auxiliary lane from I-494 to I-694, I-94 in Oakdale to Washington County Highway 19 and Woodbury Drive, or otherwise known as Woodbury Drive in Woodbury, SP A282-132F, and to add a guardrail and noise wall to MnDOT's associated I-94 maintenance project located between Oakdale and the St. Croix River, SP 8282-132, for the purpose of release for public comment. That was a mouthful. Any further comment? All right. With that, all those in favor say aye by roll call. Joe.
Mercifully for the last time today, McPherson.
Aye.
Robgent.
Aye.
Labrie.
Aye.
Ellos.
Aye.
Isaacson.
Aye.
Rees.
Aye.
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Witter.
Aye.
Kotsukos.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Solberg.
Aye.
AO.
Aye.
Leaf.
Aye.
Fighton.
Aye.
McCullough.
Aye.
Keel.
Aye.
Ashfeld.
Aye.
Howley.
Aye.
Omi.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Waslucher.
Aye.
Hager.
Aye.
Bowl.
Aye.
Dermody.
Aye.
And Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That motion passes. Moving on to next item, or information items, and our first one is the TIP development schedule for 23 to 26. Joe, you want to give us an overview?
Sure. This is the schedule for developing the TIP. We do present this annually as a info item. This has not changed from last year. This has changed from the prior years to last year, where we moved the public comment period from essentially July to essentially June, i.e. being released by TAB a month earlier. And that's because starting 2 years ago, I think, we had a lot of public comments. We went from the 10 range to the 200 range, and that carried through to last year. So other than that, this is pretty simple, and we saw this last year. As per history, we will be seeing this approved by TAB in August and the council in September. With that, I would stand for any questions about the TIP process or about this schedule.
Any questions for Joe on that information item? Not seeing any. Moving on to our next item, the travel demand management project update. And I believe, Teresa, you're available to.
Yes, I am. Thank you. I think I'm sharing my screen for this one, so.
If you have a swimmer, you are.
Oh, Jason did it. That's great.
There we go.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Teresa Kane. I'm the manager of commuter programs, which is a department at Metro Transit that does travel demand management. And we also help manage the grants from the regional solicitation in the TDM category. Next slide. So travel demand management, and again, this is not approved by our creative services department, but we call it changing minds about changing modes. So helping people realize how they can change modes and incorporate that into their lifestyle. According to the CMAQ guidance, long-term public education and outreach can be funded indefinitely, and we certainly appreciate that. Next slide. So for the employer and institutional outreach, as you know, we have my department, commuter programs, that covers areas, that does outreach in areas that are not covered by an official TMO. And then the TMOs that cover areas that are designated as high employment density, based on a study done in 2010, which is currently being revised. For the TDM professionals that do employer and institutional outreach, we provide a single point of contact for employers, institutions, to help answer their questions, put together plans. We prepare custom plans for them, including all feasible modes of van, pool, transit, carpool, whatever works for their particular area. Partner with stakeholders to implement the priorities and plan activities and supportive events to ensure sustained behavior change. And then we do prepare an analysis of the results. One recent example of this kind of outreach was a recent project that we collaborated on with our finance department, where we went to Augsburg College and did an analysis of their transit usage of the college pass and found that there was low uptake of that program. And we did the analysis to provide insight to barriers, and then we created a universal pass, which is something that the college can give to every student. I'm kind of jumping around on the points here, but the students in this case voted themselves to pay the fee out of their student funds. At the end of the pilot, we showed a great deal of success, exposed a lot more students to the college pass, and increased rides by quite a bit. And since the pilot, success, we have added Anoka Tech, Anoka Ramsey, McAllister, and Normandale, and we will continue to add schools as we can. Next slide, please. So again, the structure is the TMOs that are listed on the left, but we also have other partners that provide similar outreach, and I have a few of them named there. We do try to partner and collaborate as a region to share information, etc. Next slide, please. So the other TDM initiatives, oh, I'm sorry. The other TDM initiatives that provide similar programming are those that are selected through the regional solicitation. They do tend to go for several years, and so, we recently had a batch of them close. But just to give you a couple of examples of those kinds of interventions, the U of M did a smartphone-based intervention with a smartphone app that encouraged people to change their mode and gave them feedback and encouragement. In this case, they estimated about 3,000 participants, but I think that this was, there were less participants due to some, outside problems and probably some pandemic issues. So the fewer participants ended up raising the cost per participant, but the program was very valuable to learn how to engage with people to kind of make that behavior change sticky for them to give them prompts, etc. And then the Bicycle Connectors program, providing access to bikes, how to ride, lessons, maintenance, training, and bike buddies, which estimated about 723 participants, not that off. Actual was 500 participants. And the conversions, all of those folks continue to ride their bikes and check in to do maintenance, et cetera. So that was a real success for biking. Next slide, please. Metro Transit TDM support. I'll give you an example of the non-employer, not necessarily employer outreach, but support that we provide with TDM information. We had a staff person working with the capital area board on the Sears site development planning to talk about things that could be incorporated into the application process to help the applicants, integrate TDM into their application and then into their project. I did provide a link to that page. I don't think the final report is out, but it was a nice partnership that provided us with opportunities and information. We also provide legislatively mandated ride matching software. We provide software and access to our Guaranteed Ride Home program, which supports regular users of alternative transportation. We provide software that tracks activities, contacts, and statistics that the region can access so that we can share information. And we also provide customized marketing materials for the programs that Metro Transit provides that we can share with our partners and employers. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I can answer any questions that there are. Okay, thank you.
I will go off mute. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Teresa, for that. I appreciate the overview. Is there any questions from any members here today for Teresa? Brian?
Is there any relationship to the work that the council is doing on TDM and the thinking around the role of telecommuting in all of this?
So telecommuting is one of the modes that we call it a mode, but it is one of the modes that we promote to employers. We have materials that we can provide employers with to help them set up programs. We also partner with specialists in telework and can help employers engage with them. It is connected to the MTS work. I don't know if anyone wants to step in on that, but
Looks like Paul has got his hand up. Maybe he'd like to talk about that.
Yeah. Brian, as you can imagine, Teresa's on our project management team. We have a TMO also on our project management team for that, for the regional TDM study. And I think we're taking a step back, looking more holistically at how we're approaching TDM, acknowledging that a lot of the work we're doing now is good. We want to do more. So I think it's kind of expanding that and figuring out how to do that, who are the right people to try to do that kind of work is within the realm of the TDM study. So we have good stakeholders about how we can incorporate new strategies into the existing programs, but we're looking to do more programs too. And part of what we're going to do is have recommendations around who should be doing that. Current structure, the right structure, is there a different structure we should look at? So it's really going to be building up of all the work that Teresa.
Thanks, Brian. Teresa, how do companies learn about this program? How does the word get spread?
Well, each of the TMOs has their own website, social, et cetera, that's directed at the group that they work with. So, for example, downtown Minneapolis or the city of St. Paul. So they have their own websites and provide information. And then for the part of Metro Transit, we have some pages on the website. We do a lot of word of mouth. We triage all of the inquiries that come in. So everything comes into our department and then is assessed. And if it belongs somewhere else or they need a different resource or whatever, we refer them. If it's in our area, we work with them directly. And so word of mouth, we're launching a campaign this year. It was a little tough over the last couple of years to do advertising, but we're launching a campaign this year to start to bring people back in. And we are also going to try and launch a mini site for employers where they can go and find resources, calculators, those kinds of things. That's kind of a slow process, but we will be incorporating that starting this year.
Okay. Thank you. And it looks like Danny, you have a comment or a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just had a quick question, sort of, but not really related to this presentation necessarily, but wondering if there are any updates from you and your staff on use of any kind of streetlight data or any other data to track by people biking and walking to work or to retail or any of those modes that might help in the future with estimating counts on bicycle facilities across the metro. Do you have any updates on how you might be collecting data in the future?
Yeah, so we ourselves don't do that kind of data collection. It's not something that's really in our purview, but we do partner with bicycling agencies who do that kind of data collection. They can attend our regional meetings to share, but it's kind of a big community of folks that share that information. I don't know on behalf of the council what the council uses. If they use any kind of that data, Cole, maybe you want to answer that?
Cool.
I think I understood the question, but maybe you could just repeat it very quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Just had a quick question about the future, a little bit about the future or the intentions of either Met Transit, and really, I guess it's more of a Met Council question, but on tracking people biking and walking on bicycle facilities across the metro, if there's any movement and further using streetlight data or any other resources to better track that.
Yeah, we have been looking at streetlight. The other thing I was going to think about was, how much of the biking and walking we get into with the annual household survey and the TBI. And so it does kind of depend on the purpose. I know that they did a lot of bike and walking analysis as part of the regional park survey as well. But that's an area that we're exploring. And I think that may be something that comes up in the TDM study too, is if you have certain sub areas where you want to encourage a lot more biking and walking, we might need to do more targeted surveying. So I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of recommendation like that comes up. We know that, surveying the whole region isn't as efficient as surveying areas where we know biking and walking is a likely mode, if we really want to dig into the details. So I don't have a great answer on how we're going to do that. And I can talk to Jonathan and maybe follow up with you, Danny, but it's certainly in our interest to do a better job with that. I think a lot of it's been resource constrained to date, so.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, just another question. As we think about TDM, is there any connection to, say, the public engagement plan and some of the principles we saw there, or maybe some of the equity principles that the council speaks to? I mean, are we making those connections to particular communities that are struggling to make connections to transit or to different employment centers?
So for our part, we are taking that into consideration. For example, Metro Pass, which was primarily a pass that was used by larger employers, where it lowered the threshold for how many people can participate at a particular employer. And then we've gone out to employers that are smaller, where they have people that have to commute by transit, maybe, and pitched it to them along with a host of products that they might be able to use to help their employees get around better. That's something that we do. We don't do anything on a larger scale, again, we rely heavily on MTS to provide us with information like that. Metro Transit has its own equity policies. And of course, the regional solicitation covers that in the application. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. All right. Further questions here for Teresa, or I guess Cole on TDM?
I just wanted to note one more thing in response to Brian. I don't know how much folks are aware of this, but we did solicit for some focused equity engagement contracts here at the council. And Sarah's on, she can speak more to them, but the intent of that was to supplement a lot of our different projects with engagement with populations that are more hard to reach. And one of their first projects that these consultants are going to assist on is the TDM study and reaching some of those voices to get their participation. And, I think longer term, Brian, you were talking about how do we then engage them in the programs that we form, which is, another next step recommendation. So we do have some support to help us with the planning studies, but it's a fair question about, the implementation side as well.
Yeah, thank you for addressing both, Kel. That's helpful.
All right, looking for any other comments, discussion points here today. Not seeing any. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Cole, for giving us an overview on that and maybe what some of the plans are moving forward. This is good discussion. All right, committee members, we're on to other business. And at this point, what I would do is ask if there's any information items from any agencies presented here today. I can start just quickly. Of course, we are still in the search for a new commissioner. Nancy Daubenberg remains as the interim commissioner for the time being, and I believe we are expected to announce a new commissioner before the end of the month. And then, as we all know, although you can't really tell by the weather today, winter is over and construction season has started. We announced our kickoff last week, as well, I'm sure some of you have also started construction on your local projects. Anybody else with information for the Innocent?
Mr. Chair, this is Innocent here with the MPC here.
Yes.
I just want to provide update that PCA still continuing to take input on climate action framework. We still encourage people to maybe let other network or people that we work with other communities know that we still want people to share more information or can get into that site. The link is mn.gov/framework. So that's where we have the drafts of the document. So we'll be glad if people try to provide us with more input so that we can improve the draft. And the second update that I have is that maybe most of you have met Major Beam. She's my alternate on TAC. She will be leaving MPCA for a new job with Washington State Department of Environment and Ecology. So we'll be missing Major Beam. At this point, I don't know who will be my alternate, but I'll be checking that up with the agency.
Okay.
That's all. That's what I have.
Thank you for the update, Innocent, and congratulations to her. And let us know as soon as you get your alternate. Let Joe know that. And then if you would be so kind as to put that website again in the chat so everybody has a chance to capture that before we leave today, that would be great.
Okay, yeah.
With an update. Thank you, Innocent. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, maybe just quickly here, we've got a couple near-term funding applications that are due. Obviously, the regional solicitation's coming close here, April 14th. I assume most people have started working on that, as well as RAISE. The federal RAISE grants also due that day. Didn't plan it that way, but then after that, the last one that's been released was a series of 3 federal solicitations, all to be done at once. That's the infra, mega, and then a rural one. So that's due in May here, and I have attended a couple webinars, and I've got PowerPoints and all background information. So if people want that, that's due May 23rd, the application. But if people want some of the details from PowerPoints, I'd be happy to share it with whomever's interested. But a lot of federal money floating out there in the near term, so good to be organized on that.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. I'm sure people would like to see the PowerPoints you put together. I know you sent one over to us as well, so maybe that can be sent out to the group.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else with the update for the good of the order? All right. Not seeing any. Thank you all. We are adjourned, and have a good National Walking Day.
Thank you.